What's up, everyone? Welcome to yet another World Football stream, the end of the international window. But you know what? There's always this doom and gloom about the international window. Oh my God, I can't wait until club football comes back. And I get that. I totally get that. But this was a fun one. We are getting close to the World Cup in our parts here in Canada, the USA, and Mexico. And we've seen some cool teams either qualify or come close, like Norway, for example, a certain Erling Haaland leading them to some unbelievable results. They're about to qualify for their first tournament since 1998. I think their first major tournament since Euro 2000, 25 years, quarter centuries gone by without them playing in a big tournament. You also have South Africa, their first time qualifying for the World Cup since 2002. Now, I know that they played in the 2010 World Cup, but they were hosts. They didn't qualify, right? So it's cool seeing teams like South Africa make their way back to the World Cup, and they have a very fun and exciting team. But club football is back. No more international football for, well, until next month. But club football is back. We have, 10 days until El Clasico, which I'm sure everyone is looking forward to. But this weekend, we focus on the Premier League, and not just any Premier League, but the Fantasy Premier League. And we have a few things that we're going to speak about on this show. We're going to speak about some sneaky sleeper hits, some sleeper picks for you. We'll look at some guys that you should be avoiding, maybe someone who you should definitely choose as your captain, and also just some general sort of landscape of the Fantasy Premier League kind of notes that we'll have towards the end of the show. But first, we're going to start by going over some of the I'm too anxious to get going into this, obviously. This is our first time doing this show, so I'm ready to speak about this. We're going to actually look at the schedule first, which you can see. We have Nottingham Forest taking on Chelsea. Forest, obviously, in a bad way at this moment. So Chelsea, definitely their attackers could benefit from playing against them. Man City versus Everton. Man City, look, I'll tell you about the record later against Everton, but let's just say it is very, very good, and it's been very, very good for years. So that one is looking very promising if you have some Man City players in your team. Also, we have Fulham versus Arsenal. Fulham, struggling a little bit in comparison to maybe last season. Arsenal, Victor Gyökeres, is he going to finally get off the ground running? He's sort of saved his goals for lesser teams, so maybe he's someone that you're going to want in your team, kind of ghosts against the big guys. Then we also have Spurs versus Aston Villa. Pretty decent matchup there, actually. Two, fifth, sixth-ish place teams, those kinds of expectations around those teams. That's going to be a fun one to look forward to. And then, of course, the really, really big one, Liverpool versus Man United. A huge rivalry there. Liverpool not in great form. They lost 3 matches in a row for the first time since 2023. And Manchester United, I mean, we know they're yo-yoing all over the place with their form. A win, then a loss. They look great. They're back. Then they look horrible again. So they're a team that's difficult to trust. Now, let's go into our sneaky little sleepers here. Let's get into that first segment that I was so anxious to get into that I almost skipped over the schedule here. But those were the key matchups. My first sneaky sleeper is João Pedro. What I was saying about the Chelsea attackers, that's the reason why I am going for him. I think it's got to be, fairly obvious why I'll go with him once we see who they're playing, which we went over. But Chelsea are just coming off of a form-building win, if you will, over Liverpool. That last-minute winner sort of propelled them maybe to better form, galvanized them a little bit, because prior to that, they're a little bit hot and cold. Now they're coming up against a team that absolutely cannot keep the ball out of their own net. Since Ange took over Nottingham Forest, their defense has been broken. I mean, we talked about this last week, right, for any returning viewers, but 15 goals conceded in 7 matches, not a single victory. They're certainly not the favorites in this match. Now, a lot of people have been dropping this man here, João Pedro, which I get as he hasn't been hitting the heights he did at the Club World Cup, right? I remember how much promise he showed at that time. And honestly, you couldn't ask for a better defense for him to come up against. Not the most expensive guy, just 7.7 million. He also has been sort of transferred out of a lot of teams right now, which is why I think that is a decent idea to jump on him right now. But this Chelsea team up against Nottingham Forest, when you have that attack of probably João Pedro, Garnacho, Estevan, Pedro Neto, and Cucurella overlapping, they're going to cause a lot of issues. João Pedro is very fresh. He didn't play for Brazil this past international break. So a lot of people have dropped him, but I would hold on to him if you have him, especially considering Chelsea's upcoming matches in the Premier League. You have Forest, you have Sunderland, you have Tottenham, you have Wolves, you have Burnley. and then Arsenal. But that 5-match run should be good for him to start scoring goals. So he is absolutely one to consider. Now, the next one we'll go into is Jean-Philippe Mateta of Crystal Palace. He's playing up against Bournemouth this weekend. Now, I know his goal scoring form is a long way off from what it was last season. Last season, he pulled in 14 goals and a couple of assists. He was one of those sort of cheap, fantastic acquisitions to any fantasy Premier League team. Right now, he's not that expensive. I mean, his price has gone up because of last season, as you can see, 7.5 million. Percentage of teams that he's been selected in right now is just 9.9. And part of the reason why that isn't higher is because of those expected goals that he is underperforming on right now. Now, Crystal Palace is one of the best teams in the league in this moment, sitting in 6th place after, winning the FA Cup last season. They lost Eze and they continued to excel. This week, they're coming up against Bournemouth, which is a very good side, but a side who hasn't shown their best form when playing away this season. For this reason, I think that Mateta is going to get on track with some kind of goal involvement this weekend. And when you look at some of the other attackers in the league, there aren't necessarily layups when it comes to their form that would point to them being an obvious pick, right? Beyond Erling Haaland, the names of like strikers who have been performing, not too many. The guy directly behind Haaland in the Golden Boot race is a right winger, which we'll talk about later. So Mateta, not a bad pick at all. Crystal Palace actually, I believe they lead the Premier League, in big chances created right now. So the opportunities will come for Mateta. He will start putting them away as he did last season. It's just a matter of time. And when he does find that form, you're going to be happy that you still have him in your team. So I think that Mateta is a guy that you need to start looking towards. Now, our next fellow is Paqueta from West Ham. Great buy for the next few match days, even though West Ham have been absolutely dreadful this season. They had a horror start to the season, Potter getting the sack, Espirito Santo comes in. He joined only a couple of weeks ago. He had tough fixtures to start things off against Everton and Arsenal. Now, Paqueta cost 7.7 as well. Only in 7.5% of teams, XG of about 1.53. And that's one of the things that I will speak to you guys about, is sort of that goal threat. Now, Paqueta really showed against Arsenal how good he can be playing under Nuno Espirito Santo. And when you look at who they're playing in the coming matches, you'll be happy you transferred him in. The new manager bounce is bound to hit at some point. They have Brentford at home, a team that is struggling themselves. Then Leeds away, another team in the bottom half of the table. Newcastle at home, that's going to be tough, right? Newcastle is a good side. But then Burnley as an opportunity to grab some more points. Burnley, another team that came up this past season and is not looking fantastic. So Paqueta is a midfielder that can contribute to the attack of your FPL team. Someone who picks up the goals now and then. Actually, during this international break, he picked up an assist for Brazil, and that speaks to his overall play, his overall form at the moment. His form is at a point where he was actually selected by Ancelotti and played in both friendly matches for Brazil. Also, now that there are defensive contributions in Fantasy Premier League, he can chip in with those now and then as well, despite being more of an attacking midfielder. So Paqueta is worth thinking about. He's not expensive, well, compared to other midfielders. He has a bit of an increase in people rolling him out lately. He's actually expected to have 4.4 points. That's the expectation if you ask all of the sort of fantasy Premier League nerds who do all the mathematical calculations, right? So that's what you have, is a 4.4 points coming at you potentially. I know someone would pick Enzo. My only risk with Enzo Fernandez is that he may be a bench player. He may start off on the bench or what have you, because he did pick up a little bit of a niggling injury. So we'll see if he will actually start this weekend. But those are sort of my sneaky sleepers that you can cash in now, buy their stocks now. Now, how many times can I say now? We're going to move on to our captain. Let's look at who should be captaining your side this weekend. Should it be Erling Haaland or should it be Mohamed Salah? Those are the two most popular picks for captains right now. Now, as you can see, quite the disparity when it comes to goals in this moment. Actually, Erling Haaland overperforming on his XG this season, which last season he was actually underperforming, missing a lot of chances. Not the case this season, as he's in unbelievable form. Mo Salah, 2 goals, 2 assists, from 1.96 XG, so he's bang on where he's expected to be, but he is one of those players that's capable of overperforming. That's sort of the thing that separates a lot of attackers, right? Is the guys who are mercurial talents, who are, top of the food chain, are overperforming on their XG because they are capable of doing things that your average player cannot. And I think that the choice for this one in this moment with Liverpool struggles, I think the choice for your captain in this moment is pretty obvious. But look, Erling Haaland is that guy. If you look at the Premier League charts right now, I think about 96% of people voted for him to be their captain. Last season, Salah was a great pick. Those people who had Salah and were captaining him were raking in the points. Match after match, especially in the first 3 quarters of the season, he was just raking it in, breaking records for how quickly he got to 200 points in a season. So you seriously cannot go wrong with Salah in general, but as your captain, you want Erling Haaland. I mean, look, the 3 players in Europe's top 5 leagues that have 20-plus goal involvements for club and country since the start of August, Erling Haaland is at the top, ahead of a guy like Harry Kane, ahead of Kylian Mbappe. That is incredible company to keep. Now, Haaland and Man City are hosting Everton. This is what I was alluding to earlier, are hosting Everton at home this weekend. And this isn't a surprise, I'm sure, because the guy scores against everybody, but Haaland has scored 3 goals in 4 matches against Everton in the Premier League. There was just one match he failed to score in. Which was last season, I believe, in a 1-1 draw when City were in the midst of their terrible form. So it's a pretty safe bet that Erling Haaland is going to start this match. He was rested for Norway's second match, and he will probably score against Everton. I mean, he has 12 goals in 6 qualifying matches for Norway, and he has 21 goals in 12 matches for club and country so far this season. It's just absolutely ridiculous form. What makes this pick make even more sense is the form that Doku is in going into this. Doku has become the dribble demon once again, and the form he's in, his ability to provide Haaland with opportunities from wide areas, not to mention Rangers driving through the middle, combining with Haaland. Their link-up play has been good. Marmoush will be coming back as well. So all of these guys will be able to help him score more and more goals. With the leadership, that role that he's taken on, I think that he's just going to continue to get better and better, which is scary. So Everton, I think, are going to be a victim. They haven't defeated Manchester City since 2017 across all competitions, man. 8 years ago at this point. Set Haaland as your captain. Just do it. Set it. Forget it, collect the easy points, have that guaranteed income, if you will. So next, Sports Watcher says, do you play? I am someone who is not a complete fantasy Premier League freak. I do dabble. I get in on it. I go through waves. I'm the guy who will be so in on it for like 3, 4, 5, 6 match days. Then I'll have 2 weeks in a row where I forget. Then I'll consider giving up, but then I get motivated again and I get back in on it and continue to, watch different YouTubers who cover FPL, which there is a ton of them already. I start reading blogs, etc. So I do get in on it, but I am not like the fantasy football Premier League nerd guy that you might find on other YouTube channels. And I use nerd in an endearing term. That is a good thing in this case. Now, it's always a good thing. When is it bad? Anyway, let's get into the fades or the busts that we can speak about going into this next match day, because there are 3 guys that I want to highlight. Guys who you want to avoid, guys who are carrying a little too much risk for this match week. I'm not necessarily saying transfer these guys out of your team, because I mean, you're going to take a loss on it. It's going to be costly for you, but I don't know, maybe you want to bench them, depending on who else you have on your bench, of course. So first up, I have Salah, because it's just too risky this weekend. This is sort of what we were talking about before. He set the record for points last season, right? He had a clear gap of over 100 points between himself and second place last season. It was him, then it was Brian and Bumo. He costs 14.4 million right now. He's in, a good, just over a third of teams in this time. As we went over his XG and his stats, he's at 2 goals, 2 assists, that kind of thing. He's been an easy pick for years, right? But the way Liverpool has been playing recently, it's a bit of a risk having Salah out there. He's looked nothing close to the player he was last season. You see him walking around. You see Dominic Szoboszlai yelling at him for not getting back and helping. He just seems a little bit And it's insane saying this about him because it's Mo Salah, but he's just looked a little bit sort of pedestrian the way he's floating around out there. And Liverpool in general, the attack has been like that. So the struggles of Liverpool are main contributor to not wanting to pick him, right? Now, he's someone who people thought would be easy money. You know, he played so well last season and then he came in. The most transferred in versus the most transferred out, as you can see. Salah is on the outs right now. Semenyo, maybe we'll speak about him a little bit later, but he's on the outs right now. Now, they're playing Manchester United this weekend. Last season, Ruben Amorim was nearly able to defeat Liverpool. You remember that final minute miss from Harry Maguire. That could have been close. So who knows how this match is going to go when these two teams face off. Now, of the Liverpool players to invest in, I don't think right now it's the attackers. Just in general, you don't want to go for a Florian Wirtz. Ekitike is a risk. Gakpo hasn't really been performing incredibly well as he was at points last season. Isak hasn't really popped off yet. Going for the forwards, not a good idea. But going forward, he can do some, saying going forward against, he can do some damage against teams like Brentford, but then you have an improved Aston Villa, Man City, and then Forest. So right now, you can see why people are transferring him out at this moment. Surprisingly, Salah is a miss, but as evidenced by the 477,000 people who have transferred him out of his team, which is insane. Insane. Really insane. Now, let's move on to the next guy. The next guy who you should miss, dodge, avoid, Richarlison of Tottenham. Now, he's always been a bit of a streaky player from the beginning, that's for sure, and there's no exception there. He's on 3 Premier League goals from 7 appearances, which is not terrible form from him, but he has largely been starting due to injuries to both Randall Kolo Muani and Dominic Solanke, right? As you can see, he's in 15% of people's team selections. That's not a huge number. It's not a top contender, but he was sort of one of those cheaper options at 6.7 million that people would go for because he is a good option sort of on the bench or as a sort of, to use our own term, sleeper hit, if you will, as a forward. But now that you have Randall Kolo Muani and Dominic Solanke coming back, he probably will see his minutes get slashed. And it's not like his goals per minute ratio was great to begin with, right? And there's something else to consider. Richarlison has never managed to score against Aston Villa in 8 attempts. 8 attempts he's tried to score against them, and he's failed. Look, sports are weird. You know, there's curses, there's bogey teams, they all exist. And clearly Aston Villa is that team for Richarlison. In fact, when he's on the pitch against them, his team has only won once. That was last season, by the way. And he provided an assist coming off of the bench. So, hey, maybe he's improving in that regard. Now, another reason to say farewell to him, Spurs have a tricky schedule coming up. They have Everton away. They have Chelsea, bit of a rivalry there. Man United, Arsenal, Fulham, and Newcastle. That is tough. Maybe Fulham, not so much. Man United, you never know. For all of these reasons, players coming back, his streaky form, as well as the schedule, people are dropping Richarlison like crazy. He ranks 5th as far as transfers out going into match day 8. So Richarlison, we thank you, but no thank you at this point. And our final risky buddy, our final risky guy, miss me with Bruno Fernandes right now. Bruno Fernandes and Manchester United are simply a team that, similarly to Liverpool, in some ways, you just cannot trust in this moment. Some people keep Fernandes around because of his penalty duties and belief that United will start to find some form soon. He's a costly midfielder, though, 9 million. He's in 18% of teams. He has an XG of 3.7 in this moment and 2 goals. That XG is higher because of, well, we'll get to that in a sec. We'll get to that in a sec. It's to do with penalties, right? And I know that I mentioned how United could end up beating Liverpool just because they're so chaotic and all over the place. They almost beat them last season. Everyone knows the poor form that Liverpool's in. But these are reasons why picking Bruno is a major risk, and some other reasons, of course, like I said, United's up and down form. But also recently, one of the main reasons to pick Bruno would have been that he's a penalty taker and gets defensive contributions. He may yet get those defensive contributions, yes, because he's played far deeper at United, deeper than he needs to be, in my opinion. but he's further away from getting goals and assists from open play. And when it comes to taking penalties, he's looked incredibly rattled lately, which is too bad. He has missed multiple penalties. He's looked nervous taking them. And I do wonder if he'll start to sort of share the penalty taking duties given his poor record this season. So that's a major sort of attractive point that used to be associated with him that has been taken away a little bit. People tend to keep him around because United, when they do get a spark, he is typically at the center of it. He's usually behind that spark. Penalty plus defensive contributions, collect your points and go. But one of those things taken away, the penalties, and he's not a hot prospect anymore. Move him on, and I say bring on someone like Moises Caicedo, might be a good bet, or one of the guys that we're going to speak about in just a moment here, because we're going to close things out with just some general talking points. Those are our three fade players: Mohamed Salah, Richarlison, and Bruno Fernandes, guys that you should avoid at least for this weekend and that are on this list because of the matches that they have coming up as well. So some general points to get into, the general landscape of FPL, guys. I think that you cannot speak about FPL without touching on Antoine Semenyo of Bournemouth. I mean, what a season he's having as Bournemouth continue to be a thorn in the side, not just a thorn in the side of teams, but just a fantastic team in the Premier League. Semenyo with 6 goals and 3 assists from 7 appearances is unbelievable production from the man. There's a reason why he's appearing in 60% of teams right now and is the most transferred player going into this match day. As we saw from that tweet, he is the most transferred in player going into match day 8 of Fantasy Premier League. When it comes to getting maximum attacking points from your midfielders, because that's what he's classified as, there is no better pick right now than Antoine Semenyo. Should be your vice captain as well, potentially, because of course, as we know, Erling Haaland is going to be our captain, right, guys? His price has risen this season for sure, but at 7.9, you still get good value from him. Compare that to Bruno, which we just saw, which was what, like 9 or something like that? Not cheap, not cheap. Now, next up, Arsenal defenders, buy your stocks in Arsenal defenders now, invest, because I mean, it doesn't really matter who you go for between Saliba, Gabriel, or Timber, but those are the main dudes. But Timber right now, Jurrien Timber, may be the guy that you want to go for, as he is in some excellent, excellent form at the moment. He's considered one of the best right backs, one of the best right backs in the world right now. Not only on the defensive side of things, but he's also starting to pick up goal contributions this season as well. He's already on 2 goals and 2 assists in 7 appearances. And as the Fantasy Premier League themselves have said, are you doubling up on Arsenal defenders for game week 8? I mean, a lot of people are, and I understand it. Get Gabriel and Timber in your team. Fantastic. Now, Arsenal have Fulham next, who aren't in stupendous form at the moment. They have some easier matches coming up, which means easier. Just means clean sheets is what I'm trying to say as I stumble through that. It means clean sheets. It means not conceding goals. Then they have Crystal Palace, which is not easy. But then Sunderland, then the North London Derby. So you're mostly looking at the next 4 matches to maximize points and then reconsider with him. Another guy that we're going to go to is Nordi Mukiele. Another guy you'll want to consider if you want a cheap but strong option in defense. Sunderland's Nordi Mukiele. Of all the promoted sides, Sunderland have been the most impressive, in my opinion, compared to Burnley and Leeds. They invested heavily this past summer, and Mukiele is one of the guys that was part of that. They play against Wolves next, the worst team in the league, and Sunderland have been great defensively, one of the best defenses, have only conceded, I believe, 5 goals in 7 matches. They're a team that also will defend deep at times, meaning there will be plenty of opportunities for Nordi Mukiele to get his clearances, his interceptions, all of those things that combine tackles, etc., to get that extra points from Fantasy Premier League. Now, he's cheap. I believe he's under 3 million still. And 2 of their next 3 matches will be super competitive matches that they could even win. They have Wolves, Chelsea will be difficult, and then Everton. So there is even more hope for a clean sheet or, hey, who knows, maybe even a goal for Nordi Mukiele from a set piece or something like that. And our final guy that we want to speak about is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. You know, not the sexiest choice. Well, it's funny I use that term because he is like a model, but you know what I mean, right? Leeds haven't been great so far, but there are signs of improvement. He just has 1 goal to his name. He is getting chances. He's had 5 big chances. The finishing hasn't been there as he has settled into Leeds a little bit slowly. Absolute horror show of a match against Sheffield Wednesday in the League Cup. But Leeds have very winnable fixtures coming up. Matches against fellow struggling sides like Burnley, West Ham, not so much Brighton, but Nottingham Forest comes after that. So Burnley, West Ham, and Nottingham Forest, buying Calvert-Lewin right now may be a smart budget move to have on your bench, someone ready to take out at any given match day. So that's my pick for a cheaper striker that you may want to go for. He's not a super high goal scoring guy, but of these other guys that we spoke about quickly, we had, Semenyo at Bournemouth. If you don't have him on your team, unlucky for you. He's sort of the next one under Haaland that everyone seems to want. Jurrien Timber, definitely a guy you want to go for at Arsenal because the defense is going to be racking up the points in their next few matches. You got Nordi Mukiele, same thing. And Calvert-Lewin, just spoke about him. What I meant was he's literally a model. He does fashion modeling at the time, if that went over anyone's heads. But anyway, that's our general landscape. Things worth noting. We hit you with some sleeper hits as well as guys that you want to avoid, some fades. And that brings us to a close for our first ever Fantasy Premier League show. I appreciate you guys for joining us for this one. Appreciate you tuning in for something a little different from us here. As always, I'm Adrian. Be on the lookout for more streams from Bleacher Report and enjoy the matches this weekend. Take care, guys.